Wake up and start your day right when you subscribe to the KOSU's daily newsletter. Each weekday morning before 8 a.m., we send you the top headlines from our newsroom and beyond, including the biggest NPR stories. Don't miss out, get informed, and stay connected when you subscribe to our daily newsletter at kosu.org/newsletters. That's kosu.org/newsletters.
This is Focus Black Oklahoma. I'm Dr. Autumn Brown.
And I'm Jacob Littlebear.
Focus Black Oklahoma is sponsored by the Black Church Traditions and African American Faith Life program at Phillips Seminary, offering a master's degree in social justice online and in person. Learn more at wherefaithleads.com.
For many families, Alzheimer's doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in through forgotten names, missed appointments, and the quiet heartbreak of watching someone you love slip away. In the Black community, the disease hits harder and earlier. FBO's Zaakirah Muhammad talks Alzheimer's, not just as a medical condition, but as a community issue that demands visibility, resources, and compassion.
According to the Alzheimer's Association, over 7 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's. By 2050, this number is projected to rise to nearly 13 million. According to the Oklahoma Alzheimer's Disease and Related Dementia State Plan of 2023 through 2026, African Americans are 2 times more likely than Caucasians to develop Alzheimer's. Latinos are 1.5 times more likely than Caucasians to live with the disease. Dr. Alois Alzheimer, who identified the disease in 1901, worked with Solomon Carter Fuller, an African-American psychiatrist and scientist whose contributions helped establish our understanding of this condition. Dr. Laura Garrett is a gerontologist and community educator with the Alzheimer's Association Oklahoma chapter. Her journey into this field began with a personal connection to her grandmother and evolved into a career spanning over 20 years in dementia care and education. Research by the Alzheimer's Association found that many African Americans cite a lack of faith in the healthcare system, fearing they won't be relieved or treated equitably, and the underlying health conditions that drive much of this disparity. Here's Dr. Garrett.
A lot of it has to do with healthcare issues. There was a really interesting study done by the Alzheimer's Association asking African Americans why they think this happens. And part of what came across was their lack of faith in healthcare as a whole, as well as the idea that they would not be believed or be treated as well once they entered the system. The other thing that's kind of interesting to note is the study that looked at why the increase in diagnosis in these areas has to do with 2 kind of health issues. One is health of the heart. So health issues with the heart was a high issue, especially high blood pressure. And then the other thing was diabetes.
Dr. Garrett highlights that lifestyle changes can reduce Alzheimer's risks by up to 40%. The prescription, nutrition, physical exercise, social interaction, and strong support systems. According to the Alzheimer's Association, 83% of the help provided in the United States comes from family members, friends, or other unpaid caregivers. Approximately 1/4 of dementia caregivers are of the same generation, meaning they care for not only an aging parent, but also for at least one child. A speech pathologist in Oakland, California, Lane Enchikin's story began at what should have been a joyful occasion, his son's college graduation in 2009. During a family reunion that weekend, he noticed something troubling about his father. Recalling his experience with his grandmother who had passed away from dementia 20 years prior, he said,
I go to this weekend and spend the weekend with him and notice that he's having memory problems. Like he would ask the same question multiple times during the day, or he would forget people that we had talked to or where we had been. And so I said to him, hey, Dad, do you think you could be having memory problems? And most people who have dementia in the very beginning stages would deny it, hide it, pretend they didn't. Not my dad. My dad was like, I think I do. And I was like, well, that's kind of concerning given your mom. And he agreed with that. And so then that opened a conversation with my son and my stepmother to talk about what were the plans for my dad's future.
Lane was living in the Bay Area at the time, working at a job he loved with no plans to leave. But his father didn't want to return to Kentucky where Lane's stepmother lived. His son, living in Utah, suggested that they relocate there, where the cost of living was much lower. He was initially resistant, but after visiting the University of Utah Medical Center and discovering he could buy a 6-bedroom home on half an acre for just over $300,000, he made the leap. He got a job at the university and moved, planning to have caregivers live in the basement as his father's condition progressed.
As my dad started to dement, and I thought it would be just the best plan ever. And it all fell apart after 2 weeks. My dad heard me talking to my son, pulling into the garage. He thought I had picked someone up and was bringing them home. He got super upset. The next morning, I went into his bedroom. He was gone. And he ended up being on this road trip for hours on his way back to Arizona. And he told my relatives, and this is not uncommon with people with dementia, that I tried to steal his money and I was having orgies. And to this day, some of my relatives believe that. So it cost me family relationships. I had moved my whole life from an area that I loved to a place that I didn't really want to be as much. And it was devastating.
The challenges with the medical system added another layer of frustration. Lane's father's primary care physician initially didn't believe he had dementia. Despite Lane's professional experience, it took time to convince the doctor that his father wasn't as together as he appeared to be. Then came a court case. A neuropsychologist testified that Lane's father was simply a, quote, retired, lovely, older gentleman who wanted to travel around the country, end quote. At that point, Lane's father had been found naked in a field in Oklahoma. His brother had to fly out to get him. He would become confused and lost in snowstorms while driving between Arizona and Kentucky.
And then here's this medical professional claiming that he's fine. So it's very frustrating.
In Tulsa, Beverly Ball, executive director of the Alzheimer's Diversity Outreach Services, has spent more than 2 decades on the front lines. Her journey began in 1999 when the Oklahoma chapter of the Alzheimer's Association approached her with an urgent mission: educate African American communities about a disease that was ravaging their families at alarming rates. Ball recalls,
the chapter came to me 26 years ago to help educate the African American community, the BIPOC community, about Alzheimer's disease and any form of dementia and how it was affecting our community and our culture on a local and national level. They said that the disease was really high, like the numbers are high among our culture, and they were having problems educating the communities across the nation.
According to the National Institutes of Health, families caring for loved ones with dementia often receive misdiagnoses. Their relatives labeled with incorrect problems rather than being properly identified. The Alzheimer's Diversity Outreach Services created the Family Caregiver Respite Relief Program, a 3-month intensive support system that provides education, therapy, and community resources, all completely free of charge. The program started small in 2023 with 15 caregivers funded out of pocket because the Alzheimer's Diversity Outreach Services believes so deeply in its necessity. By 2024, they were serving 20 families. Ball explains further.
It is not a mental issue. It affects their mental ability because of what is going on inside of their brain. It is actually a brain disease that affects their behavior. And when a person's behavior changes, everyone thinks it's mental. They're having a mental meltdown or they are mentally, digressing and they need help mentally. And a lot of times they're put on the wrong medications for mental problems when actually it's, Alzheimer's disease or Alzheimer's dementia. So it's been a lot of educating and trying to help families understand Alzheimer's dementia. Now they're saying there's over 400 different types of dementia. So trying to help a caregiver know that, it takes a lot. And so what we have done, we created a program called Family Caregiver Respite Relief so that we could help caregivers get the care that they needed to also be able to take care of their loved ones and to also know how to treat their loved ones and what was really going on inside their brain.
Caregivers are managing their own health and financial sacrifices to provide round-the-clock care they can neither outsource nor sustain. The Alzheimer's Diversity Outreach Services lost their youngest participant, a 47-year-old man who died while caring for his mother. Fall expands on why.
He didn't take care of himself in trying to take care of his mother, which was very, very sad. But that is happening all over the nation when you have cultures that are used to taking care of their loved ones, doing the best that they can, and cannot afford to put their loved ones in facilities where the cost is $100 and something a day or $3,000 or $4,000 a month, when that's somebody's whole check, in our communities.
Lane Entrican also has clear advice for families facing similar situations.
Knowing that the things they accuse you of or say is not personal to them or you. It's hard not to take it personally, but it isn't personal. It's a function of a deteriorating brain. Also, to create as much as you can opportunities for respite. If you're taking care of someone with dementia, they could, at some point in the development of the dementia, they could get agitated. They might stop eating. They might blame you for things. They might not recognize you and get really paranoid.
Dr. Laura Garrett echoes Mr. Fred Rogers and said, look for the helpers.
I'm a big Mr. Rogers fan, and I don't know if you noticed, he always talked about look for the helpers. I think that's one thing that we really try to get across, those of us who work with the Alzheimer's Association. It's so tragic to me when I find somebody out in the community who says, oh, I wish I knew about your resources, or my gosh, it would have made a huge difference if I had just known about the Alzheimer's Association. So we try very hard to get into all kinds of communities, all kinds of areas to talk about the resources that are out there.
The Alzheimer's Diversity Outreach Services offers free care consultation, educational workshop, and 2 support groups. One in Midtown and another in North Tulsa, where the majority of the city's African-American community resides. If you are seeking support, you can reach the Alzheimer's Diversity Outreach Services at 918-514-3154 or visit their website at alzoutreach.org. The Alzheimer's Association offers support groups nationwide, educational programs on the warning signs, and guidance for managing difficult behaviors. To learn more, visit alz.org. Early diagnosis now opens doors to treatments that didn't exist 5 years ago. For those interested in contributing to research, ChildMatch connects volunteers with clinical studies for free. You don't need to have Alzheimer's to participate. Control groups are essential to advancing our understanding of the disease. Visit childmatch.alz.org. Dementia doesn't just affect the person diagnosed. It reshapes families and relationships. Understanding Alzheimer's disease and dementia is critical, especially as new research continues to reveal disparities in diagnosis and care. For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Zaakirah Muhammad in Santa Clara, California.
In part 1, we heard the numbers and the stories behind them, revealing how queer youth in Oklahoma are disproportionately pushed to the margins, often with nowhere safe to land. In part 2, we go beyond the statistics to find young people navigating rejection, resilience, and survival in a state where support can feel scarce. Here's FBO's Anna Wilson.
Youth Services of Tulsa, or YST, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting young people in need ages 12 to 24. Advocates like Carolyn Olson, Associate Director of Community Relations and Communications at YST, say recent laws and policies in Oklahoma and nationwide have increased stigma, stress, and barriers for queer youth, such as bans on gender-affirming care for minors, restrictions on school protections for transgender students, and widespread anti-LGBTQ plus rhetoric. Here's Olsen.
I think, gosh, for any LGBTQ youth, housed or unhoused, I think that right now the political climate is a challenge. And I think that that is incredibly stressful for our young people. And, I think it's stressful for all of us, right? Like we're all sort of stressed all the time by everything that's going on. And I have to imagine, if I then had that added element of being stressed, but also like afraid all the time. I think a lot of our young people are afraid and angry. And, a lot of us are angry for a myriad of reasons, but angry about, feeling like their rights are at stake. Every unhoused youth is marginalized. It's an added element when they also identify as LGBTQ. And you can imagine not just being marginalized externally, but psychologically what that does to a young person, how isolating that feels. I think the community element for queer youth is huge, whether that's through our LGBTQ program or our coffee house program. Coffee house is a safe, sober space for middle schoolers and high schoolers, open every Saturday, 7 to 11. A lot of our young people who attend coffee house identify as LGBTQ. It's a safe community, it's an accepting community. So those are huge. But also, I think that sense of community is really important. It's important in all of our programs, but particularly those that I've touched on. I mean, our drop-in center, the station, our street outreach team, they really work on forming a community bond.
Even beyond formal programs, young people need and benefit from a safe and consistent place of their own, a third space, where they can belong, connect, and exist without fear. For unhoused youth specifically, that third space can sometimes be the only space they feel a true sense of community. Many young people, including Kai, see that kind of space as essential.
Just a place to go and hang out and not be harassed by either law enforcement or workers or whatever. Just some sort of third space where people can just go and exist and interact. Doesn't have to be a shelter, doesn't have to be a place you can sleep or a place that's giving you free food. I just feel like a place would help. A place that's safe and a place that's stable would be wonderful.
In Tulsa, community members are stepping up to create programs that give queer youth a safe, welcoming space. One of these initiatives is PRISM, an upcoming program through the Tulsa Performing Arts Center, and here are two of its contributors sharing their experience helping bring it to life.
My name's Lacey Johnson. I am a current senior student at the University of Tulsa. I was working with the George Kaiser Family Foundation Summer Impact Program. And through them, I was paired with the Tulsa Performing Arts Center, where I met my coworker, Nelson Stewart, and I met Peter Otis. And together, about 2 weeks in, I was introduced to this concept, and we followed it through all the way.
My name is Pete Otis, and I am the Director of Development at the Tulsa Performing Arts Center. Sarah Phoenix, our VP of Development and Community Engagement, she identified this need for queer youth in Tulsa. There's not a lot of programming specifically dedicated to them, and in our current climate, the need is increasing for representation, a sense of community, a place to go, a safe place, and the TPAC has always been that for me, and so she reached out to me before I even worked at the TPAC to spearhead this program. So when I started there full time, that was definitely at the top of the list. And basically the original concept was open-ended, just an education-based program for queer youth in the Tulsa area that would bring them into the building and identify the TPAC as a safe space that they could utilize and feel comfortable in. And that had, a theatrical or performing arts element to it. And that's basically how it started. And she really let us run with it. So we started with that very simple premise and went from there.
I remember seeing the broad kind of concept of PRISM and just considering how useful and how beneficial it would be for people that I hold dear. And I know specifically within this current political climate, there is a significant lacking. And it's a necessity for people to feel represented and to feel heard and to have a safe space to identify as an artist and to express themselves as an artist. And so I think as soon as I heard about the program, I immediately saw what it could be, and that immediately made me attached to it.
And it's not just TPAC itself that can serve as a third space for queer youth. PRISM also plans to work with other community partners. First, we hear again from Otis, then Johnson.
One of the original ideas was that Lacey helped us develop was to identify these community spaces that were safe for them to go to, that, we knew the ownership of those spaces would welcome youth that were queer identifying, and just places around the Tulsa community that they can depend on as allyship and just support, and places to, like you said, just to go when they need somewhere to go that is not home, school, the places where they're required to be.
Yeah, just building off that, I think there's two elements to it. I think there's the literal vicinity part. And so with Prism, our launch is supposed to be with Gypsy Coffee House. And that is a space that is ally or queer identifying as all the spaces that we plan on working with. And that, like Peter was saying, gives people an immediate recognition of, okay, I walk in and I can be fully comfortable here. And here is a place where I can truly rest my elbows. I can rest myself and truly engage with the fullest person that I am. You walk in and you just know, okay, this is a place where I can be me. And I think more than anything, that is a dire need right now. To exist in a place where you don't have to explain yourself and justify your existence, but you can just exist.
I think it's important for non-queer identifying people to know just how exhausting that can be, to be constantly weighing, the pros and cons of even going into a certain room because of who's in there. And that can exist in public spaces, that can exist at home. For me, it was a very specifically a home situation that what hypervigilance was what I lived with. And it is exhausting, and it's trauma building. It just wears on you, and having a space that you can just shed all of that and not be looking over your shoulder, or not be policing the way you're saying things even, or the way your voice sounds, is such a relief, because it is so exhausting to go through life like that.
I think a lot of the policies that are either directly discriminatory or that promote discriminatory rhetoric ultimately encourage people to hide themselves to some extent. And I think that is the common daily tragedy of it all that we see in everybody, queer or not, but specifically for queer people.
The rhetoric and just what's being said out there, I think it was really important for us to identify ways to listen a lot to the constituency that we were hoping to serve. So, asking that question, what would I have benefited from when I was a queer youth in Tulsa? The answer is kind of a question mark, because, the landscape is so different. The political landscape is so different than it was 20 years ago. And so part of the program that we are really adamant about is this feedback loop that we want to start with this community to really address and give them the resources that they actually need, not to just throw up some programming that is fun and theatrical or performing arts based, but something that honors what they are experiencing and kind of is fit for purpose for what we are hoping to offer them, which is that safe space and what would actually benefit them going forward. What tools do they need? Is it, help with resumes, or is it help finding jobs? Things like that. Listening as well as combating the things that you're hearing in the mainstream. I kind of experienced transient homelessness after graduating high school for this reason specifically, and a lot of progress has been made since then. But I do think it's important to acknowledge that the work is far from done, and there's still so many milestones that we have yet to achieve. And now is the time to fight.
Although PRISM is still in its earliest planning stages, as of right now, the program is set to launch beginning in July 2026, but information will soon be available on their website at tulsapac.com. Youth homelessness in Tulsa is complex, and queer youth face unique and often overlooked challenges that go beyond finding a place to sleep. Community organizations, outreach programs, and local initiatives like PRISM are working to provide safe spaces, support, and a sense of belonging. But for everyone else, listening is just as important. The clearest understanding comes from the voices of those living it. Here's Rex with the final takeaway.
Put yourself in other people's shoes. Empathy goes a long way. And you don't have to understand it, but take a minute, look around, see, the clouds in the sky, see people going to and from work. Take a minute, think about it, and think about how everybody else is going through something. You have no idea what somebody's going through. Imagine being on the bus, right? And you're sitting across from people and, you just had a rough day at work. Well, person across from you, their daughter just died of cancer. Person next to you, they just got into college. Person next to them, they just moved in from another country and they're struggling to adjust. Like, there's so many things that people are going through on such a daily basis, good and bad. And I think if we just take a minute to slow down and acknowledge that and empathize with people, we'd all be a lot better off for it.
For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Anna Wilson in Tulsa.
Would you like to pitch a story to FBO?
Or work with us as a correspondent?
Please email us at contact@focusblackoklahoma.com.
Or call 918-807-3886. In May of 2025, Oklahoma passed House Bill 1588, creating the Spring Creek Watershed Study Act to address waterway contamination from poultry farm waste in northeastern Oklahoma. The bill's passage is due in part to a local nonprofit which has worked for decades to protect the Spring Creek watershed. Roma Carter has the story.
The United States' current chicken poultry industry is a billion-dollar agricultural force which raises mass amounts of chickens for consumption in inhospitable environments, often housing up to 50,000 chickens per barn at a time, giving each chicken roughly 1 to 2 square feet of space, according to the Animal Place Sanctuary. These conditions are concerning for cruelty and safety purposes, but a factor that often isn't considered is the subsequent manure produced and where it goes. Excess manure is often circled back onto the land once it undergoes a sterilization process to add nutrients to the soil, yet the amount of manure produced is mountainous and results in a nutrient overload. So when it rains, that excess manure placed on farmland makes its way into the natural waterways surrounding the land. One of those main waterways is Spring Creek, a 35-mile-long spring which spans from Delaware County to the Grand River in northeast Oklahoma. Located on Cherokee Nation territory, Spring Creek is considered one of the most pristine creeks in the state, inhabiting 40 out of the 175 species of fish in Oklahoma waterways, according to the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. It is a culturally and environmentally important stream for the inhabitants of the Cherokee Nation. Manure is generally a nutrient-rich component essential for plant and animal nourishment, but an overabundance of manure can leave lasting damage on an ecosystem. Phosphorus and nitrates are the chemicals released from manure, and in excess, create algae blooms of bacteria which dissolve oxygen in water and release toxins bad for human and animal health. In small dosages, these chemicals can be rather harmless, but in excess can kill fish, increase the probability of E. coli spread, and leave lasting health implications, according to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA. Spring Creek Coalition sees the situation as a devastating issue undertaking the waters of northeast Oklahoma, one that has existed for decades. Established in the late 1990s, Spring Creek Coalition has been a force of advocacy for the Spring Creek waterway as it has faced threats of contamination and misuse, but nothing like the recent 2018 poultry industry boom occurring in the Arkansas-Oklahoma region. Rural farmer and vice president of Spring Creek Coalition, Mike Appeal, works to ensure this creek remains as pristine as nature intended. Yet he has encountered seemingly insurmountable barriers as it pertains to protecting the waterway. Appeal explains the status and process of the 2018 poultry industry boom.
So the poultry farms are these huge, they're more industrial than I think agricultural. The birds are never outside. They're in these massive buildings. And this current wave was like, these are like now mega houses. These are not the traditional houses that were here for the last 20 years. They're twice the size. There's more of them. There's all these new farms have 6 houses on them. Each house can hold, I believe, 50,000 birds. So we're talking like 300,000 birds at a time on these farms. That's way more than anything was ever done here in this area. It was just like all of a sudden there was hundreds of them. And it was almost like overnight. They built these things extremely fast. And so we were just like caught totally off guard and really tried to organize around it very fast. The 2018 invasion, the majority of those new houses were absentee landowners. They were people that lived out of state. And so they were investing. It wasn't about, having your land and trying to figure out how you can stay on your farm and like figure out a way to make agriculture work. They were going around buying up 60-acre parcels from people, paying extremely high prices. So they were able to get a lot of land because people were like, oh my God, you're going to pay that? I'm going to sell it. So these were not farms that existed. They were people coming from outside buying up land to put these poultry houses on. So there's very little contact with them. So they hire people to take care of their houses. I would love to be able to sit down with people and just like talk to them about it, but I don't know what they know.
Appeal further explains the difficulty of speaking directly with those outsourced to manage the farms.
So you're not allowed to go on these farms. They're all biological. Like there's huge signs that say stop. You're not allowed to enter because of their biological safety. So they're worried about bird flu or any kind of contaminant, because if any of these birds get sick, it would be devastating because they're so confined.
Barriers of engaging with people involved in the chicken poultry industry vary widely, from inaccessibility of the farmers to the Farm Bureau Federation dismissing locals' concerns. Appeal highlights how all of these chicken industries are based in Arkansas and scout Oklahoma land for their warehouses.
It's important to note that these companies are all Arkansas-based. They're not Oklahoma. So the majority of the revenue and the economic impact is for Arkansas. It's not for Oklahoma. I have yet to see, and I've tried to get answers of what is the real impact of poultry in Oklahoma, because it doesn't seem like a lot. It seems like there are some growers in Oklahoma, so there's some livelihoods there. But all the chickens are processed in Arkansas. The feed comes from Arkansas. The propane comes from Arkansas. So it seems like Oklahoma is left with the waste and not really a whole lot of the benefit.
Tyson Foods and Simmons Foods, two top poultry producers in the nation, have been fighting a legal battle with the state of Oklahoma since 2005 due to pollution linked from their poultry runoff into the Illinois River. This class action lawsuit has been appealed by all companies. But recently, State Attorney General Gettner Drummond and Oklahoma Judge Gregory Frizzell have ruled them liable for negligent water contamination. The cost consists of $420,000 in financial restitution collectively paid by Tyson Foods, Simmons Foods, Cal-Maine Foods, Cargill Incorporated, George's Incorporated, Cobb Ventris Incorporated, and Peterson Farms Incorporated. In addition, a 30-year payment plan will fund water remediation efforts. One of the companies, George's Incorporated, has even agreed to ensure no poultry waste runoff will reach the Illinois River. According to Appeal, that is protocol for what all of these poultry companies should be doing.
There is a company called George's. They were named in that Illinois River lawsuit. They just announced that they're not going to allow any of their poultry litter to be spread in the Illinois River watershed. So that's huge. And that's really what needs to happen. The companies need, since it's waste generated by their industry, they need to be responsible for their waste. They cannot pass it on to these contract growers for them to deal with. Right now, the huge integrators, the Simmons, the Tysons, wash their hands of the litter. They don't do anything. So it's up to the contract grower to dispose of it, to find a home for it. If we had like a city, all of a sudden there was a city in northeast Oklahoma that had hundreds of thousands of people that produced all this waste, we would have a plan for it. We would figure out what to do with it. It wouldn't just be discharged into the waterways. What we're talking about, the amount of poultry litter, is city level, is like the amount that is generated by a large municipality. And so therefore there should be a plan for that. There should be a regional plan, not just a watershed by watershed by watershed. It should be a regional plan of how are we going to deal with this level of litter, because it's all going into the creek. Everything flows into the water. We know that.
A watershed is an area of land where rain and snow collect and drain into nearby bodies of water. Essentially, all water, whether clean or not, strains back into larger bodies of water. No natural waterway is isolated. Transcending borders, Appeal sees the threat of this being a larger issue.
The Department of Agriculture, the legislative, they're just not doing their job of really protecting the water. And so I'm a farmer. I mean, this is our full-time living. We're agricultural. We love rural areas. We want to see agricultural survive. This is not about, trying to squash agriculture. Not at all. I would love to see a thriving agricultural economy in here. What we have now is more industrial. It is not agricultural. If you're a family that wants to maybe move out of the city and go to a rural area, and to enjoy like the quietness, the peacefulness, the beauty of a rural area, you're not going to go move next to a poultry house. You won't, because they're disgusting. They smell. We smell them every time we drive out and we go to Tulsa. We even smell them at our farm, even though we're not next to one. It's just if someone's applying it in the area, the odor is so intense. So this isn't making rural areas thrive. It's going to kill them by having this. And it's unfortunate that that's the leadership we have, that we don't see like, okay, let's really think this through. Let's think through how this can all work and let's figure it out. And Spring Creek Coalition is more than happy to have a seat at the table and to talk about it and to figure out solutions. We don't want to battle this out in courts like that. That was our last, kind of our last effort. We tried to have legislative. We had a lot of meetings, community meetings. We would love to have like Simmons, which is the main one driving this current invasion. Let's talk. They do not talk. They don't respond. There's no dialogue whatsoever. And so that's what's really frustrating, is because I feel like if we can just sit down together, let's figure this out. Let's try to work together and see how we can come up with a way where, that their industry could survive here in Oklahoma. And we also have clean water, and we also have vibrant rural communities.
Tune in next month to hear the action Spring Creek Coalition is taking to rectify the creek's existing contamination. For Focus Black Oklahoma, I am Roma Carter in Delaware County.
On a small stage in Tulsa, big stories are being told. Stories of Black womanhood, survival, joy, and reckoning. World Stage Theater is bringing a bold new production to life with For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enuf, a production of Ntozake Shange's 1976 groundbreaking choreopoem. First written to give voice to what was too often silenced, the work still resonates decades later. Kelli McCloud-Schingen, Executive Director of World Stage Theater, speaks with FBO about how this production honors Shange's legacy while speaking directly to the current moment.
I knew at some point in my career as artistic director for World Stage that I wanted to put this production on, to stage it. But I knew that I couldn't do it when we first started because we really didn't have, I don't think that we had the bravery, first of all. And then second of all, I think that I was really looking for this ensemble group of women that I felt didn't really exist when we first started. There wasn't this pool of brilliant Black women actors that there are now. What I have enjoyed the most is being in rehearsal with these women as they go through these stories, as we learn and uncover the meaning behind so much of this poetry, and then to watch them relate it to their own experiences and the spirit that it's created of community amongst the women. They are brilliant. They're some of the strongest actors that are in Tulsa right now, and the ages range from 20-something to 70. And so we have all of the phases of womanhood in many ways and the experiences that come with that. It has been so incredibly rich for me to come and be surrounded by that brilliance, that love, that sisterhood.
in a way that I haven't experienced in a really, really, really long time. So at this time, it just feels like a warm bath, honestly. Every time I make it to rehearsal, it's incredibly rewarding to be a part of this process. I can't help but think of a lot of the political conversation around how Black women were very involved and very active and raising their voices to say, can we pay attention to what's happening? Because if we don't pay attention, it's going to be too late. And their voices were either silenced, not listened to. They were told that they were, hysterical or that they were being overdramatic and oftentimes dismissed. And the women persist, right? They persist. They continue to go forward and continue to try to impact their world. This play, in my opinion, is about resilience. It's about women raising their voice, being narrators of their experiences and the experience in many ways of other African American women that is oftentimes visible. Sometimes it's invisible. And I think that their strength comes from the resilience and the ability to continue to have Black girl joy.
Thanks for joining us on Focus Black Oklahoma. Black history isn't only marked by struggle, it's also filled with moments of laughter, brilliance, and pride that stay with us for a lifetime. In this story, Sondra Slade takes us back to a personal remembrance, but also a shared one, echoing the quiet questions and powerful affirmations that shape how we come to know ourselves.
Growing up in Oklahoma as a chocolate pecan tan Black woman, I often faced ridicule for my melanin. But because my family was always very supportive of me, I didn't take the criticism to heart. You know, the usual sayings: chocolate brown, coffee grind, black as night, don't close your eyes in the dark, Buster Brown, and so on. I would tell my mom and she would say things like, you are not Black, you are brown. That means they are not the smartest. As I have gotten older, I have really embraced my chocolate melanin. Learning more about how my melanin not only protects me, but also is something another race tries to get with their spray-on tans, tanning beds, and vacation trips. My sisters and I have more of my father's coloring. My mother is a much lighter hue than us, more cafe au lait mixed with bronze. I favor my dad so much, people would say that it looked like my mother had nothing to do with my birth, but my smile is from my mom. On occasion, I would be with my mother and someone would say, girl, you sure are the spitting image of your daddy. My sisters look like a mixture of both of our parents. I am 4 years older than my middle sister, Sandy, and 10 years older than my baby sister, Shine. My younger sister, Shine, and I grew up in different households. I was in high school when she was in elementary. My mother taught learning disabled kids at Hawthorne Elementary, while my sister went to Emerson Elementary. It wasn't odd for us to go to a different school than where my mom taught. My middle sister, Sandy, and I went to Immaculate Conception Elementary. My mother is a picture of etiquette, always teaching us manners and how to be cool as a cucumber. One day, we were sitting around the dinner table, waiting for my dad to put the barbecue in one pan. My mom is in the kitchen slowly stirring the baked beans. She tells me to get out the paper plates and plastic cutlery. I'm putting the plates down, and Sandy is folding paper napkins. My mom calls Shine in to come and eat. As we get ready to eat, Shine looks at all of us, then asks my mom, why is she white? We all look at Shine in a puzzled manner. My mom, cooler than a polar bear's toenail, says, baby, why do you think that? And Shine says, well, all of us are the same color. Sondra, Sandy, and Daddy, but you are white. Again, my mom coolly says, how can you say that? Shine gets up from the table and gets a paper plate and points to it. See, Mama, you are closer to the color of the paper plate and we are not. My dad, Sandy, and I burst out laughing, but my mom is not laughing or smiling. She was looking at the plate like she could punch it. What made you think of that plate, honey? My mom said sweetly. Standing proudly, Shange said that her teacher, Miss Collier, has been teaching them about colors and what goes with what. Shange continues to explain that Miss Collier has colored plates along the top of her chalkboard. Each one of the plates represents a nationality and could point to which one you are. So the color brown was there to represent Sondra, Sandy, and Daddy. And since there was not a color that represented you, Mama, I figured that you were white. By this time, I can tell my mom is steaming, but she is smiling, and Shange is looking confused. My dad is crying at this point and slapping the table. Sandy and I are snickering, but have our hands over our mouths. My mom looked at all of us, then turned to Shange and said, "Baby, that is not correct. But how long has Miss Collier had the color plates hanging?" Shange says, "Oh, Mom, it's been up there for a bit because I had my poster up there." By then, Dad had stopped laughing and started eating. Sandy and I went back to eating our food. Shange ran and gave her a hug and said, "I love you." Half-heartedly, Mom gave her a hug and just sat there. We noticed Mom just moving her food around on her plate and not eating. That night, I could hear my parents talking quite loudly. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I remember my dad saying, "Now, if you need me, call me, but do what you do, Cucumber." The next morning, my dad took us all to school, which was odd because he usually was gone before we got up. Even though we were confused, we knew not to ask. My day went great, and I assume Sandy's did also. Our Aunt Belle came to pick us up, which was odd, but Aunt Belle always had food with her, so we were happy. Aunt Belle took us over to her house because she said that Dad was helping get Shange from school, and it was going to be a while. About an hour later, Dad came to pick us up and informed us that dinner was already ready. When we got home, Shange was working on a puzzle. Mom was sitting in the front room drinking tea and looking at a magazine. As we settled in to finish our homework, the doorbell rang, and my mother's friend, Mrs. Dorothea Latimer, came in. Miss Dorothea Latimer was also an elementary teacher who taught learning disabled students at Hawthorne with my mom. We liked the way Miss Latimer was really expressive and animated when she taught. She walked right past me and saw my mom in the living room and headed straight for her. "Girl, it's all over the school. Now tell me the real deal, 'cause I can't believe she actually did that." I hadn't made it back to the den yet, and this sounded like something I wanted to hear. So I stood on the other side of the column, just out of sight, but within full earshot. "Did she try to tell you what she had up was correct?" My mother sat there looking at Miss Latimer, sipping her tea, and said, "Honey, no, you know I came in there just to talk to her and see how her classroom was set up. I made sure it was after school. That's why I left early, to get there." I introduced myself and told her who my child was. I didn't tell her anything. We walked around, and honey, she was so proud of her little things she had around her room. Girl, you know she got them from the alphabet place, looking cheap and no creativity whatsoever. Miss Latimer says, "They don't know anything about creativity." Anyhow, my mom continued, I stopped her when she tried to gloss over the plates. She said, "Oh yeah, I made that to help the children," and I stopped her right there. I said, "Help how?" And she said, "My class has so many different children. I wanted to help them out with knowing who is what." I said, "Oh really? Who gave you the authority on this racist mess you are trying to teach the kids?" She started stuttering, talking about, "Well, I was just trying to help out." Dorothea, I wasn't shouting, but I wasn't keeping my voice low either. By then, a couple of teachers had come to the door since it was open and peeked in. One of them had the nerve to ask, was everything okay? Miss Collier said, "Oh, I think it's a misunderstanding." I said, "Oh, no, honey, come in and look at this mess." So the Asian teacher comes in and doesn't notice it right off. So I pointed out to her, and she sees the colors, doesn't get it. I say to Miss Collier, "Tell her what this mess means." Miss Collier is quiet and looking scared, so I tell her, "Oh, you yellow, honey, according to her little paper plates." The teacher turns around quickly and says, "What the heck?" At this point, Miss Collier starts crying, and you know I don't care about that at all. By then, the vice principal had come down there and asked what was going on. You know Collier is crying and can't talk, so I asked the vice principal, "Do you know what color plate you are?" The vice principal turns around quickly and asks, "What?" So, of course, I go in and I explain to her what my daughter Shine said based on the lack of creativity and lack of knowledge. Because of these paper plates, my daughter thinks I'm white. I ain't never in my life have passed for anything other than a black woman. The vice principal looks up in horror at the plates and tells Miss Collier to meet her in her office now. I looked at the vice principal and asked, "When are these racist plates coming down?" She said, "I will get the janitor." And I said, "He didn't put them up, and if they are up here tomorrow, I will be back." The vice principal says, "I will take care of it." And my mother says, "Listen, you better get a letter out to the parents before I get on the horn and let them folks know what you got going on in here." My mother smiled when she got done. Miss Latimer was fanning herself and laughing. My mother said, "You know she had to take them plates down when she went to that room." Honey, if my baby tell me they are up there, I won't be as cool as I was. I gasped loudly because I was thinking if this was my mom being cool, then I was scared when she wasn't. My mom and Miss Latimer called me to come from around the corner. I did, and I told them why I gasped. My mother said, "I may have raised my voice, but honey, I was cool as a cucumber, letting her know where she had messed up. But you best believe she got the message and won't do it again. She will be looking at paper plates a bit differently next time." Happy Black History Month.
Focus, Black Oklahoma is produced in partnership with KOSU Radio and Tri-City Collective. Additional support is provided by the Commemoration Fund and Press Forward. Our theme music is by Moffat Music.
Focus, Black Oklahoma's executive producers are Quresh Ali Lansana and Bracken Clark. Our associate producers are Jesse Ulrich and Naomi Agnew. Our production interns are Alexander Evans, Jess Grimes, Roma Carter, and Anna Wilson.
You can visit us online at kosu.org or focusblackoklahoma.com and on YouTube at Tri-City Collective OK. You can follow us on Instagram at FocusBlackOK and on Facebook at facebook.com/FocusBlackOK.com. You can hear Focus Black Oklahoma on demand at kosu.org, the NPR app, npr.org, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Did you know KOSU accepts vehicles as a form of support? You get a tax deduction, and we'll take care of the rest. Visit kosu.org or call 855-277-2346.